All right, guys. My name is Brian Vosper. I'm here with Mike Greaney today. He's the director of research here at CESJ. He's also a Notre Dame grad and a CPA. So,
University of Evansville graduate.
And a University of Evansville graduate. So, shout out to all the people from both those. But yeah, I'm just gonna welcome Mike Greaney here. We're basically gonna be talking a lot about kind of how he discovered CESJ, what he does here. Also, he just came out with two books. One he just finished up and has a pretty awesome cover, and then one's getting edited right now. But
the one that was just finished is scheduled for January.
Yeah.
2018, just in case you're downloading this later.
Yeah, so make sure you pre-order that. And so it seriously does have a sweet cover. But yeah. So I'm just gonna be shooting some questions out at Mike. Make sure again, if you guys have any questions, send them to thirdway, THIRDWAY at CESJ.org. We'll make sure to answer some of those, or if you just have any inquiries of some sort, just shoot them over there and we'll help you out. And also, just make sure that you guys remember the website is CESJ.org. It has a lot of ebooks, articles, a lot of learning materials there. Mike actually does a daily blog on there. If you go on the left side of the page, where there's you'll see actually a link to the podcast as well there. There's a section where Mike actually posts the blogs daily. And so those are pretty cool. They do get a lot of traffic, and it will give you a good opportunity to learn. You can actually even communicate with Mike right there, or get in a Facebook battle with him if you want.
You don't want. I prefer that you not want.
Because he will destroy you.
I like conversations rather than battles.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm just going to welcome Mike here. I'm just going to start off asking him the first question I've got for him today. It is, how did you first discover CESJ, and how long have you been here?
Yeah, well, I've been here since about 1987. And it was sort of just a lot of serendipity and coincidence that I came across CESJ. I had been working at the American Red Cross in the field division, auditing service to armed forces and veterans installations at military bases.
Wow.
And they had a big reorganization in 1984. So I left there, went temporarily with the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and while there, I heard that Georgetown University Medical Center was hiring.
Ooh.
So I went there, and the very first faculty practice plan that I audited was physical medicine and rehabilitation, which Dr. Norman Kurland's wife, he's not a medical doctor, he's a doctor of jurisprudence, his wife was the administrator for the faculty practice plan.
I was wondering how you got to meet him. I was like, wait a minute, there has to be some connection there. Sweet.
Yeah, there's a connection there. As I said, it's a very long string of coincidence here. And apparently she was sufficiently impressed with the fact that I showed her how to keep a set of books accurately and correctly, that when CESJ started looking around for someone to set up their books after the Presidential Task Force on Project Economic Justice, which had just been completed, which I think was that on an earlier podcast?
The book?
Presidential Task Force on Project Economic Justice.
We actually haven't talked about that. I think there might have been a plug here and there that they had that formed, but I don't think we went into depth about that.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, to get back on track here, they needed someone to set up the book, so I came in, and fortunately, Dawn Brohan, the director of communications, even though she hadn't been trained as an accountant, she had taken a couple of accounting courses, had written everything down. If you don't know what you're doing, write it down so that somebody else can figure out just what the heck you did. So I was able to set up the accounting for CESJ. Then I got interested in the message. I mean, as far as I was concerned at first, it was just a way to earn a little bit of extra money.
Yeah.
But then I joined CESJ, and of course, joining CESJ, since it's an all-volunteer organization, meant that I could no longer charge what I was doing. So, But
that's a little bit of a downside. But
as I learned more about the mission, the goals, the just third way, the principles of economic and social justice, I began writing about it. I began talking about it, and eventually starting a blog about it and publishing books and articles. And so I can bore anybody with it anywhere, anytime.
He's full of information, guys, and so
full of something anyway.
yeah, and he's so yeah. If you guys have any questions, his email also is mgreaney at CESJ.org. And then GREANEY at CESJ.org. Greaney. Yeah, and so you can also send some emails there if you have questions directly for him, because there are a lot of opportunities here at CESJ, and there's a lot of help that we need from you guys. And so he's been here for a while now. He has lots of experience, and he just loves what they share. Since you've been here for so long, like, are there any, like, what changes have you seen over time since, like, the 80s to now? Are there similar obstacles you guys still face today, or I don't know?
I think that the obstacles are the same, but the situation has become more polarized. It's like, we've always had the rich and the poor. I mean, as they say, the poor are with you always, but the gap is getting greater and greater. The rich are much richer, the poor are poorer, and yesterday, or it was the day before yesterday, we had the elections here in Northern Virginia, well, actually throughout the entire Commonwealth. But what you notice is that the Democrats and the Republicans and all the other parties used to actually talk to one another. The presidential task force that I just referred to a moment ago, that was bipartisan. You had people at the opposite, or what was then the opposite ends of the political spectrum, coming together and working on a joint project and carrying it through to completion. Under President Ronald Reagan, who, as far as a lot of the Democrats are concerned today, was a demon now. I thought, but back then he was the statesman who could come before Democrats and Republicans and deliver a message, which was expanded capital ownership as a way to combat Marxism and the spread of communism in the Caribbean basin and Central and South America.
So the presidential task force, you guys formed that directly, right? Or how did that happen?
Dr. Norman Kurland knows a lot more about the specifics of that, as does Don Brohan, since I came in afterwards.
Oh, okay.
I can give anecdotal evidence that they got together and had legislation passed to form the task force to investigate the situation. And I can tell you that the task force report that came out, High Road to Economic Justice, and the orientation book, Every Worker and Owner, was presented both to President Reagan and to Pope John Paul II. But if you want to get the inside story and get all the interesting anecdotes about it and how it went and who was involved, you really have to talk to Don and Norm.
Okay. And that was Project Economic Justice? Was that
the Presidential Task Force on Project Economic Justice. A very long word for a very simple thing. Own or be owned. Power follows property. How do we do it?
Wow. That's awesome. And then I remember Norm, we were talking about how in the beginning they got involved with Senator Russell Long. Was that possibly the connection that got it?
Well, no, that was actually earlier. That was in the very early 70s.
Okay.
And, of course, Norm has a much better story about that, since he was the one who lived it. Basically, they managed to get to Senator Russell Long, and he was so fascinated by the idea that, and this was at a time when Russell Long was arguably, possibly the most powerful man in the world. I mean, Nixon was on the skids, the whole Watergate thing and everything else, but Russell Long was in a key position in the Senate, and pretty much what he wanted, he got. He got interested in the ESOP. And at their first meeting, they went out to dinner at the Madison Hotel downtown, which is a rather exclusive place.
Yeah.
And
I think I've walked by
keep
it.
in mind that this was a United States senator that lobbyists would kill their grandmothers to get 5 minutes with.
Oh, wow.
They spent 4 hours, and Senator Long picked up the tab.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang. And so that's power of connections right there.
Yeah, and soon after that, the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act of 1974 was enacted, and it included the ESOP.
Oh, wow.
The Employee Stock Ownership Plan that Louis Kelso invented. Norm was Louis Kelso's Washington counsel.
Wow. That's really powerful right there. And so you guys can look that up as well, since he was a powerful senator. If you want to Google any of this stuff,
there is an article on the website called "Dinner at the Madison" that gives the whole story.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, go to the website. That's under the archives section, right?
It's in the articles section.
Okay,
yes.
so articles section, Dinner at the Madison. You can check that out. Moving on, we were talking about how Mike actually he does write the daily blog for CESJ. Sometimes there are fans, but also there are I have, from my observance, there are some people that are the common critics. But
I prefer to focus on the fans.
Yeah,
the critics sometimes give me good ideas, but I sort of edit them and turn it more positive.
yeah. Sometimes though, if you have haters, you're maybe doing something right, but because it does happen, sometimes there always are going to be people.
If you don't have critics, then you must not be doing anything.
Yeah. And so I was just wondering, are there any posts that come to mind that are maybe some of your all-time favorites, or?
I would say that's a dangerous question to ask a writer.
Oh, true.
Because no matter what you're working on at the moment, that's your favorite.
Okay.
Or it better be, because why else are you writing it?
True.
That being said, of course, and this just repeats what I just said, the current blog series, I don't remember what I called it, but it's basically on the importance of social justice, on what social justice really is, and it's actually what we call a twofer, because what I did was adapt the introduction I'm drafting for the book I'm working on. And so what I did was, desperate for something to put up on the daily blog, I just took chunks of that and started putting it up. And then, very interesting, I had a number of people say, "Hey, you ought to turn that into a book." I thought, well, you're kind of late, because I stole this from a book that I've been working on.
That's a good marketing strategy right there.
Well, actually, there are a number of very good writers who post what they're writing on their blog to get feedback as they're writing it, which sometimes allows them to make changes in the text and that sort of thing. Some of the newer fiction writers do that a lot, especially in fantasy and science fiction.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That's actually really smart, because then at the same time that can get you, if you're just posting chunks of your book as just as a blog or something, you can get feedback right there, and at the same time it's kind of a way to do a rough draft without really.
Yeah.
I don't know. You've spent money in getting it printed already or something like that.
Yeah, plus you've got a built-in fan base, because the people buy into it. And plus you're giving them something for free.
There we go.
And this is interesting. A number of years ago, a famous science fiction writer, whom I won't name because it was embarrassing for him, somebody pirated his works and gave them away for free on the internet.
Oh.
And he spent all his money pursuing these people. And of course, trying to track somebody down on the internet is virtually impossible. And another science fiction writer by the name of Eric Flint said, "Why did you waste all your money? When people were reading your stuff for free, your sales were going up, because, it's hard to read on the internet."
Yeah.
And people got something for free and said, "Well, heck with this, I'll go out and buy the book," which they did. And he was discussing this with his publisher, Jim Bain, at Bain Books, and he said, "You keep telling me that giving your stuff away for free, improves your sales and your public image. Why don't you do it?" And so Eric Flint put up a couple of his books for free on the Bain Books website, and his sales went up. He said, it not only didn't cost him any money, he was making money. Now, that doesn't mean I agree with a lot of Eric Flint's fiction. I like his writing, but he has ideas I disagree with. But that was one heck of a good idea. So if you go to the CESJ website, we stole his idea, and if he wants, if Mr. Flint wants payment, he can download any of our books for free, which you can do too in the ebook section on the CESJ website, because you'll notice that most of the stuff we have that we publish in hard copy, you can download for free on the website in e-copy. So a rather long way of saying we have free books, download them.
Yeah. Wow, that's really smart, because I've observed just I'm a young entrepreneur and I'm still learning a lot, like all you guys. And so one thing that I actually observed is that on social media, a lot of big people actually are doing this, whether it be on Instagram, even with I don't know, even fitness pages, or I don't know, business people on Facebook. They'll upload short ebooks for free and stuff like that. But I never really understood that, what you just said. Like, wow, because it's a good way to market it. Like, market something you're actually selling, because if you throw someone a freebie, then they're going to buy more. But I have thought of it a little, but I never really thought of it in the way of books. So, wow, that's...
Well, if you stop to think about it, the ebook is the perfect thing to give away because it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And the customer, or the non-customer, or the pseudo-customer, I guess, gets some value. And if he really likes it, the chances are high he'll go out and buy the hard copy because it's just so much easier to handle.
Yeah. Dang, that's pretty smart. So now, actually, I just started up a book. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, during this podcast,
you wrote your quick novel there.
Yeah.
War and Peace.
War
is bad, peace is good.
Pretty much. It's actually a New York Times bestseller already. But just moving on. So make sure you go check out that most recent blog post. Then you'll learn something cool from what Mike's doing. Maybe you can study up again on that one topic, social justice, if you don't remember what that meant. And
this is the week of November 6th to the 10th, so
yeah,
just 2017.
Yeah.
Just in case this has become a historical document here.
Yeah, and so I was wondering also, where do you usually get your inspiration for the blogs, or is there, like, do you kind of apply them to News Today, or what do you...
Well, it's a variety of sources. As I mentioned before, one of the easiest ones when I'm lazy is to take something I've already written or I'm working on and put it up there so that I can just get it out of the way so I can maintain my record.
Yeah.
I have not missed a daily blog posting since August 2008 when I started the blog.
Dang.
Although it's been touch and go a couple of times. But blogs now have a feature where you can schedule things in advance so you don't have to do it that day. Thank goodness. So I can actually take a day off.
Take those sick days.
Oh, you betcha. And the newspapers, of course, are very good. The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. Even when I disagree with them, they may give me some good ideas. For example, this past week, I've been trying to get to write a blog on this whole idea of using tax reform and fiddling with the taxes to finance economic growth. I said, no, what taxes are intended to finance government, they take a portion of what has already been produced out of economic growth. They don't stimulate economic growth. If you want to stimulate economic growth, figure out a way to finance new capital formation and make as many people as possible owners. Then you'll have something to tax. Don't try to go at it backwards like that. Another source is, as you hinted sort of, critics on Facebook or in email, where people will make some comment that I thought, well, I can refute that, or let me expand upon that, or you're totally wrong and I'm right, here's why. One of my favorites.
Yeah, I've seen a few or heard a few of the trolls going off on some things, but at the end of the day, it sometimes
trolls are useful because then you get to stuff them back under their bridge.
Yeah, and sometimes maybe it gets you to see even a point of view maybe you didn't really understand. You're able to address it, and so that's pretty cool. And so, are there any like common critiques you see of, hopefully not of your book that's coming out, but maybe are there any common critiques that you see?
Possibly the most common one I've seen recently is people questioning our ideas of money and credit.
Okay.
Now, money and credit are key to people becoming owners of capital. But most people are stuck in what we call the past savings paradigm, meaning that the only way to finance new capital formation is to reduce consumption, accumulate savings, and then finance the new capital.
Okay.
Well, what classic banking theory, however, which is thousands of years old, is that, well, no, the best way to finance new capital formation is not to restrict consumption in the past. All that does is reduce demand and all the justification for new capital in the first place. It's to increase production in the future. And there's this thing called a promise. You may have heard of them. If you promise to deliver the value of something in the future in exchange for something you get now, you can get what you need to construct new capital or form capital, put it to work producing marketable goods and services, sell them to the public, generate a profit, and out of the profit, future savings, you pay back the people who gave you what you needed to form the capital in the first place. So where most people think that you finance new capital by cutting consumption in the past, the best way to do it is to increase production in the future.
Oh, okay.
But because that is so unusual an idea to most people, they say, I don't understand it. You have to save. We're not arguing. You do have to save. It's when you save that's the question.
Okay. And so do the promises, do those exist with just banks, or are we just talking,
well,
or are there laws?
See, money is anything that could be accepted in settlement of a debt. Or it's all things transferred in commerce. So if you've had any legal training, that tells you something immediately. It says, oh, money is a contract. Well, then you stop to think, well, what is a contract? It's a promise to deliver. See, if this were a class in business law, I'd say all contracts have three elements: offer, acceptance, and consideration. The offer is, I'll do this if you do that. The acceptance is, sure, I accept your offer. The consideration is, legally, the inducement to enter into a contract. In actual people language, that means the thing of value you're discussing. In other words, the thing I do is consideration, and the thing you do back is consideration. If the three elements are not there, offer, acceptance, consideration, there's no contract. So ultimately, all money is a contract, just as, in that sense, all contracts are money. So when you talk about promises, you can have it in the colloquial sense, like, oh, I promise to do that. But when you make it a formal promise, a contract, all those elements have to be there. And if they're there, you can pretty much do anything that's possible. Because I don't have the capital I need now to do something. You may have what I need to make the capital. So I say, if you give me what I need to form this capital, when it becomes productive and I make a profit, I'll pay you what it's worth.
Okay. Wow. And so I think that's really interesting right there. I was wondering, because I've been studying up a lot on just like current ESOP laws and stuff, but is that being done today, or is it still with the promises like to be able to use future capital to say like, or are you able to just create contracts and do that?
The situation is extremely complicated these days because banking theory is based on a set of fallacies that John Maynard Keynes embodied in his economic theories.
Okay.
People think this stuff works this way, the way Keynes said, but it really doesn't. See, commercial banks were invented to create money for projects that generate a profit.
Of course.
And unfortunately, what people think is that banks accumulate money, then lend it out. But that's not what banks were invented to do. Actually, there's three kinds of banks. I mean, this could get very complicated. But the commercial bank was invented to take the present value of something embodied in a contract and issue and create money to buy that, so that the money that the borrower takes, the person who came up with this contract and said, how much money can you create based on this contract, and the money will be backed by that contract. So you go out, spend the money, the borrower goes out, spends the money, forms the capital, makes it productive, takes some of the profits, and buys back his contract. He redeems his contract. He pays his bill. It's called a bill of exchange. This is where the expression paying your bills comes from, because you issued a bill, now you have to redeem it.
Did they? And so, but I imagine, if that person creates the contract and they go to a bank and it's like obviously not a good deal for the bank,
then they won't take it.
Yeah. And so do they usually, they're like, okay, we need to revise this and we'll take it? Or do they just work together to create a new contract? Or
you can do that, or you can go to another bank or something. See, the thing is that they call them bills of exchange, because see, the first principle of finance, now take notes on this because there'll be a test, is that to know the difference between a mortgage and a bill of exchange. A mortgage is a past savings instrument. A bill of exchange is a future savings instrument.
Okay.
So if you're lending out somebody else's savings, that's a mortgage type operation. If you're creating money based on a bill of exchange, that's a future savings type operation. Okay. So that the borrower creates this contract called a bill of exchange. Now, most of these never see a bank. They're business to business, B2B type of situation.
Okay.
In fact, the vast bulk of commercial transactions are not in the form of what most people even consider money. They're money, but most people don't think of it that way.
The trade services or
it's bills of exchange, it's letters of credit, it's drafts, it's promissory notes. They're all money. But most people think, no. Money is that check, that banknote, that coin. That's just one form of money, and frankly, that's the least common form of money. In fact, commerce was carried on with money for thousands of years before coins were even invented. So the technical terms these days for a bill of exchange that is used directly in business is a merchant's or trade acceptance, because it's not money until the other party accepts it. Remember, the elements of a contract are offer, acceptance, and consideration. I can offer you anything I like, but if you don't accept it, no money has been created.
Yeah.
Now, but when it's offered to a bank, it's called a banker's acceptance. Now, the advantage to offering it to a bank is that if every time you wanted to buy something, you had to go to every person who had something to sell and make a separate agreement saying, will you accept my contract? Well, I don't even know who you are. I don't even want your contract because I don't know if it'll be good. But what if I went to someone who of known worth, and known credit worthiness, like a bank, got the bank's promise, a banknote, and said, will you accept this? Well, I have no idea who you are, but I recognize that the issuer of that banknote. So yes, I will sell you what you want in exchange for that contract, not yours. So what the commercial banks were invented to do was take individual promises and turn them into general promises that can circulate as current money. Currency means current money. Money that passes current in the economy.
Okay. I think so. With the mortgages, I imagine that's just most people. They're just gonna think mortgage.
Well, most
just
people think of a mortgage as a home.
Yeah, just
mortgage,
with your home.
But for instance, a pawn ticket, that's a small value chattel mortgage. In other words, if an asset exists and you draw a contract on it, that contract is a mortgage. Yeah. It's like when you factor in inventory, you pre-sell inventory, that's a mortgage. The famous cheese banks of Parma, where the farmers make their cheese, but they need the money right now, even though the stuff has to age for a couple of years. They take it down to the cheese bank and get a note on that cheese that they can go and sell. They've taken a mortgage. They've mortgaged their cheese.
So it's kind of like you don't. It's basically just like a loan today. You don't have the money to do something, and then you pay mortgage. You just pay you pay interest for the money you borrow.
So the difference between in financial terms, one of the differences between a mortgage and a bill of exchange is that a mortgage pays interest. A bill of exchange is discounted.
Okay.
Now, one of the funny things you'll see about government debt these days is that they have under Keynesian monetary theory, they have so confused things that a bill of credit, which is a government bill of exchange, is called a bond. But a bond is a mortgage type of instrument, and it bears interest. A bill of credit is supposed to be discounted. So, because Keynes is so confused in his monetary theory, what you have are mortgages. You have bills of credit being called mortgages, and mortgages being called bills of exchange, and government debt being called an asset. Well, no, there's nothing there. It's backed by a promise that they might be able to make good, but there's nothing there that says that they have to.
Okay. So sorry if some of the questions I'm asking might be kind of stupid, guys.
No. The only stupid question, unless you're being vicious or malicious or something, is the one you didn't ask.
There we go. It's just I'm trying to put myself in your guys' shoes. So I'm just learning as well. So yeah. And then giving a little shout out to Mike's books. He's an author, so he actually has one coming out in January. That book is currently the title is 10 Battles That Every Catholic Should Know, right?
Yeah. Well, fortunately that wasn't my title.
Okay.
My suggested title was Dracula and Billy the Kid Meet Mehmed the Conqueror.
Oh,
A Child's Garden of Siege Warfare. For some reason, they didn't like that.
Okay.
So then they changed it to 10 Battles Every Catholic Should Know. And I thought, well, why every Catholic? Why not every Protestant, every Muslim, every Jew, even every Satanist? I think everybody should know them. But it's a Catholic publisher, so of course they want to appeal to their market first.
There we go. Yeah.
And I can't tell you the name of the publisher yet because they asked me to keep it quiet until they start their PR campaign, and I'm not sure when that's supposed to begin.
Okay. And then also you're also finishing another one right now, Dawn. I'm gonna have her on a future episode. It's Norm's daughter, but it's Red Star Over Bethlehem.
Well, that was the working title, but we looked at that and I thought, not too many people would be able to get a hint of what the book was about by reading the title.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's kind of narrow. Now, true, it is kind of drenched in religious language, but that's by coincidence. It's basically a study of where social justice came from, how it developed, and what happened to it. Where it went bad.
Okay.
And how did it get back to being what it's supposed to be? And it's a rather long story. The book is probably about twice as long as anything else I've ever written.
Wow.
And it's only the first part. Hopefully, if it's a success, we'll get 2 other books out of it. But of course, that depends on how many thousands of copies you buy. So order them now so you can get them. But yeah, the title we're toying with the words. Something about a question of human dignity. What happened to social justice? Something to make it more obvious what the book is about from the title, rather than making people guess.
One thing how long is the book?
Right now, before Dawn finishes hacking and slashing at it, it's about 140,000 words. Okay. Which,
good thing you didn't say 140,000
pages. A longish
pages.
novel is about 100,000.
Okay. How many pages is that?
I'm estimating maximum about 450.
Okay.
So that's pretty hefty.
That's not terrible, though.
But I'm told that once you get past the first chapters, which we're reworking, it goes pretty fast.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about is I'm not the best at like doing audiobooks and stuff, as you guys probably realized from the green growth paper. I'm gonna redo that actually, because I was listening back to it. I did mess up a decent amount.
Yeah, and I understand there's a number of redundancies, which you could probably cut about 15, 20 minutes off the time.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'll probably when I have time, I'm gonna redo that. But yeah, maybe what I could do for you guys, though, if you can get me a copy, maybe I can work on doing an audiobook eventually, and so I can read that for you. But yeah. What was your inspiration for each book? So it seems like Red Star or Bethlehem, that's the work title might change, but that seems like it has, you said it's more like kind of the background of CESJ, basically, kind of what social justice, how it came about, how it's differed from how it differs today.
And I found some remarkable things, while doing the actual research. It's amazing how many people, people who call themselves historians these days don't bother to look at history. But that particular book came out of a series of blog postings. And by coincidence, they were running about this time last year. And since they were starting to get deep into philosophical things and history and that sort of thing, I was copying them to a friend of mine who is a tenured professor at a college I better not name because he can get into trouble probably. I mean, college professors get into trouble when they teach truth. Did you know that? And at that time, he hadn't been tenured, so it was very iffy at the point. But we were discussing that, and he said, and he made the mistake of saying, you ought to turn that into a book. So you can either praise him or blame him, which is another reason for keeping his name out of it right at the moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One thing that I also wanted to know, this is getting into one of the last questions we have today. It was, what's your biggest goal with CESJ, or because you're also a certified public accountant with the Equity Expansion International. What's your biggest goal today, and what keeps you motivated, or what keeps you going?
Okay, that's a softball.
Yeah.
My goal is to see the passage of a Capital Homestead Act.
Okay. See the passage.
And that's described in more detail than you may want at the moment on the CESJ website under Capital Homesteading.
Okay.
It's a very large subject, so I won't get into it today any more than to say it's a way that every child, woman, and man can become an owner of capital without having to accumulate savings first. Remember what I said about what you want to do is finance capital not out of past reductions in consumption, but future increases in production.
Okay. And so the Capital Homestead Act, make sure you guys go check that out. Giving my knowledge on it, that idea was first brought up with Abraham Lincoln with something that was actually called the Homestead Act. So they're actually working on something that applies to today, and to actually do exactly what he's saying, create legislation that actually allows for the use of future savings to...
Yeah, people to be able to accumulate capital that generates an income without taking money out of their pockets or reducing consumption income at the present. What it does is increase consumption income in the future.
Okay. And then what keeps you motivated? Why are you so passionate about this, Mike?
Well, stop to think about it. Wouldn't you like to be able to do what you want to do if you had an independent income and didn't have to worry about it? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't happen to have an independent income right now, but I'd like to have one. And if everyone else had one, I think you'd see a lot less trouble, a lot less fighting, a lot less conflict, a lot less polarization in the world. Remember, because when we started out talking about it, you said, your first question was, how's the situation, have things changed since I started with CESJ? Well, yes, they have. The world's gotten worse. I'd like to make it better. Now, what keeps me motivated? I'd say it's the little small victories like finishing a book, getting a nice blog posting out that people say, hey, I wish I'd written that. Well, you may not be able to write it, but you can share it or like it.
There we go. So I think that's something really important, that what he said. It's those small victories, that keep you going. Mike's a good friend. I've gotten to know him working here, and I invite you guys to go check out some of his stuff. The blog series. Shoot him an email. Maybe you can get an early copy of his book or something.
Well, or if you want to visit Amazon or Barnes and Noble and plug my name in the book search, you'll get most of the books I've edited and about the half dozen I've written as a sole author.
Okay.
Some of them you might actually find interesting.
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually set a goal to. I really want to read your new one when it comes out.
So do I. It has pictures and everything.
There we go. But yeah, thanks again for listening today, guys. We hope that you're able to send some questions in to Third Way. Again, just the word THIRDWAY at CESJ.org. Or you can send an email to Mike directly, mgreaney, MGREANEY at CESJ.org. And we'll help you out with that. And make sure to check out the website so you can maybe learn more about the Homestead Act. And also just kind of so you can ask questions. I've been able to drop in or hear a few conference calls that CESJ is having with people from around the world, and it's really interesting hearing some of the receptiveness of people from all over the world. They had a conversation with some people from Poland, from Ukraine yesterday.
Poland and Ukraine. Both places.
Okay, Poland and Ukraine yesterday, and so there are people that have a lot of questions about this stuff, and they're very interested, and so. Also, if you have any questions for me directly, my email is just brianvosper, BRYANVOSPER @gmail.com. But again, thanks again for listening, and we hope you have a great day.